So if you follow me on Twitter, you know that a couple days ago I put out a tweet that was like, my sister and I just spent the last 20 minutes discussing who we think A is, and now we're going to spend how to discuss getting a life, because we literally spent so long discussing why we think someone's A, why we think the other person isn't A. Like, we went through this whole like crazy long obsessive discussion, and at the end of it we were like, wow, we're kind of psychotic. So I put out that tweet and a lot of you guys were like tweeting back and forth at me, and then I saw that my friend Allison, who's Amarique's here on YouTube, she tweeted, who do you guys think A is? So I wrote back to her being like, you know, this is who I think it is, and we kind of got into this long like Twitter discussion. So I feel bad for anyone who follows the both of us mutually, because your timeline was probably overtaken with PLL tweets. After we talked about who it is, she was like, oh my god, should this be a vlog? And I was kind of like, oh my god, who is A tag? And we were kind of just kidding, but kind of not. So she went ahead and filmed her vlog discussing who she thinks is A, and I'm totally serious now. This is serious. I'm doing it too. So I encourage all of you, if you have really strong opinions about who you think A is, which I really think a lot of you do because a lot of you guys were like fighting with me on mine, definitely feel free to leave it as a video response to this video, or just write it in the comments what you think, because I'd love to hear all of your theories as well, because we're all crazy. So I want to preface this by saying that I'm a very rational, logical person, and I really don't make assumptions or statements before I know things are true. So the fact that I'm putting something on the internet that could be totally wrong is really freaky to me. Like, I'm so like set in this, and then I'm gonna watch it back a couple weeks from now when I realize that I was totally wrong, and I'm gonna be like, oh my god, there's a whole video on the internet proving how much of an idiot I am. But it's okay, it's a TV show, I'm allowed to get weird about it. And I also want to throw out there, before you guys say any kind of questions like, why would A do this if it's this person, because wouldn't he this? A is not of upstanding moral questioning to begin with. The question is, why would A do this if you didn't want to get in trouble? Doesn't exist, because if he didn't want to get in trouble, he wouldn't be blackmailing and harassing people. So let's just think about that before we ask the question, why would A do so-and-so, because then he'd get in trouble, because he could get in trouble for a lot of reasons. He's A. So Allison had a list of all the main characters, why she thought who wasn't or wasn't, so I guess I'll just kind of go through it fast. I don't think it's the four girls or the parents. I'm totally not saying it's Arya's dad, because I really don't think so, but he totally has motive too. I mean, Allison did see him macking with that student in the car, and she could have threatened to reveal it to his wife, so maybe that's why he killed her and then fled the country after killing her with his whole family. So, I mean, it does kind of sound like a crazy motive. Plus, he drives a black car, which A drives. Plus, his name is Byron, which is evidence enough. I mean, his name is Byron. He's definitely down to get into some trouble. I really, really don't think it's Garrett or Jenna. I mean, obviously they're crazy and they're onto something. Maybe they were part of the murder. But I don't think they're A, because they really have been like made us been thinking that it's them this whole season. So I really don't think it's them, especially because the cast has said so much that they were so shocked when they found out. If you were shocked that Jenna or Garrett was doing this to them, you obviously haven't been watching the show, because it really wouldn't be that shocking to me. I don't know. The same reason with Melissa. I feel like they've trying now recently to make it look like it's Melissa, so I really don't think it is her in the end. I don't think it's anything. I think they're just trying to throw us off with the Melissa thing. One of the suspects I originally thought it was Crazy Uncle Bobby. If you watched Allison's vlog, though, she totally shot that theory down. Thanks, Allison, for ruining my biggest suspicion. So now I'll tell you guys who I really think A is. I think A is Ezra. When you first hear that you think it's Ezra, everyone flips out and they're like, oh my god, not Ezra. And trust me, I love Ezra too. Like, if I could marry Ezra, I would. He's a beautiful, beautiful person. The TV show has said that they did not put anything in there by accident. Everything, they give you clues as to who A is. Everything is there intentionally. So that's why when you rewatch the episodes and you start thinking about stuff, it really does start to make sense that it's Ezra. So I will go through why I think it's Ezra and all the clues that point that could be Ezra. But I'm not sure if they will actually go through with it being him, because the audience loves him so much that I think there'd be kind of like a really big outcry if Ezra turned out to be A, because so many people are obsessed with him as a character. But just listen to my clues about why I think Ezra is A, and then you can tell me if you think I'm crazy. Out of all the suspects, like Ren, Melissa, Garrett, all of them, they all have brown eyes. And throughout the whole series, they keep referring to A as someone who's pretty eyes, or they're like, oh, you have really pretty eyes, or how you doing, pretty eyes, all that kind of stuff. And Ezra has blue eyes. Ezra, out of all the main suspects, has blue eyes. Everyone else is brown. He's the one with the pretty eyes. So I think that definitely points to him a little bit. And then they always show A writing these notes on a typewriter, and it's very clearly put out that Ezra has a typewriter. It's all through his apartment. You see shots of the typewriter. So I really think they're trying to show, you know, like show that Ezra has the typewriter, and they always show A typing on a typewriter. So I definitely think like that is a really big clue right there. I mean, if it ends up not being Ezra, I really think they're just trying to throw us off with that clue. But otherwise, I would say that's a clue to someone being A. Everything that people point to Noel being A, Ezra is always in the same scenario. Everyone thought it was Noel being A that Hannah saw, but Ezra obviously was in the same situation. A sends Hannah the message being like she knew too much, and we're all thinking it's because Noel saw her. But no, who is the other person in that situation besides Arya who could have seen her? Ezra. Ezra's at the scene with his car, Arya leaves, and then Hannah gets hit by a car. It easily could have been Ezra's car. If you go to episode 12, they've said that that's like the biggest clue in the whole series is in episode 12, and that's the one where Hannah's in the hospital. And everyone's like, it's because Noel writes A on the paper. And I think it's because Ezra is A and Noel writes A on Ezra's paper. Not that Noel is saying he's A. And the minute he writes A on that paper, Ezra gets this look on his face like he's terrified. And everyone automatically assumes he's terrified because, you know, his relationship with Ari is going to be found out, or he's being blackmailed into changing a student's grade. I think it was very kind of like a subtle clue that Ezra is A. People are saying also that, okay, well, it doesn't make sense because Ezra doesn't know any of them beforehand, all this stuff, and that could not have been revealed yet because we do know that Ezra went to school in Hollis, which is in the area, and that Ezra was there in the first place because in the Halloween episode, you see Arya running into Ezra, and she didn't even know who he was at the time. So he was definitely in town during all of that stuff going on with Allison. So we can't say for certain, like, oh, well, no, that doesn't make sense because Ezra didn't know any of them because he could have clearly known them before. We just don't know, and he's lying about it. Everyone keeps saying, like, oh, why would Ezra fake not knowing her? Well, why would A harass someone? Like, A is not a reasonable person. A does ridiculous things, so don't try to have like rational judgments. Also, the writers have said that A is a main character who was in the pilot of the show. Ezra was the very first character shown besides a member of the family of the 4 girls. So besides Arya, Arya's family, people like that, Ezra was the very first main character introduced that was outside of the family. So I just think that'd be a clever writing thing for them to introduce A right away, and we had no idea of it the whole time. I think it's going to come out that he is the Ian's friend that everyone's been talking about, because if you remember in the episodes, they've been saying that Allison was hanging out with one of Ian's friends, not with Ian. It was an older boy, she was hanging out with one of Ian's friends, and everyone just automatically assumed it was Ian when they were talking about the older boy, but it came out later that it was one of his friends. I think it's going to come out that Ezra knew them in some way, either that he was part of NAT with them or that he just knew them or he's friends with Ian in some way, and she was hanging out with Ezra. And it makes sense too because her name, Vivian Darkbloom, is an anagram for the guy who wrote the book Lolita, and Lolita is a book about an older teacher. So it would definitely make sense that it's a reference back to Ezra because it's another literary reference, and they use a lot of references, and A always uses literary references like Tom Sawyer and different books like that. So I really think it's all pointing back to the English teacher with all of these literary references. It also makes sense because while they're at school, that makes sense how all those crazy things would be happening to them. Like, how would notes get put on their lunch? Stuff like that, and that's why I think it really makes sense for it to be Ezra because he's at the school all the time. He's at all of the dances they go to. He's usually around when all of this stuff is happening at school functions, at least. For everyone being like, oh, why would Ezra try to get himself in trouble with Arya? If he really is A, he's getting in a whole lot of trouble to begin with. He's harassing, blackmailing, threatening to kill people. Like, all of this kind of stuff, that's a lot of trouble too. And everyone being like, oh, wouldn't he not want to risk his career as a teacher? Well, he's sleeping with a 16-year-old, so that also really doesn't sway me. I'm definitely not saying like 100% I know who it is at all, because there are other things that add up for it being other theories. Like, a lot of people are saying that Ren is A, and that makes sense because Ren, you know, definitely could have mixed up Emily's creams, definitely could have been in the hospital to sign Hannah's cast, definitely could have taken that surveillance picture of them. So I really do think they are putting out clues that could make it Ren as well. But I don't think that Ren was prominent enough of a character. I mean, he was in the beginning and then he is now, but all throughout the series it wasn't a really big thing about Ren every single episode, and that's why I think Ezra makes more sense because Ezra's a really big character. Oh, they also said that the cast, when they found out, started laughing about who it was. They said that the actor who played Ezra started laughing. So I think that's a tip-off that he kind of found out, like, oh, I'm A, shocker, because everyone wouldn't think it was him until until you were told it, because everyone loves Ezra. The other thing I think they could be doing is definitely the twin theory. I know if you read the books, there was definitely that thing with Allison having a twin. I think the spin they could put on it for this series is that Jenna is actually Allison's twin, and that she was always the other twin, and that's why they had so many problems and everything, and that's why Allison ended up throwing the bomb in there, because she knew Jenna was in there. So I definitely think that could come out, and that makes a lot of sense why the therapist would say that she knew the person when she figured out it was A, because if it really was the crazy twin like it is in the books, the therapist might have seen her. Also, the producer or whoever it was put out a picture of the Radley Sanitarium, and that was in the books. That was the crazy house that the secret twin was at. So it definitely could be a reference that it's the twin theory, so it makes sense. but also Radley could just be another reference to Kill a Mockingbird, which was the book that Ezra was teaching. I look like a complete psycho now that I just went through a fake TV show and I was sitting here discussing things that aren't real for this long and getting this into it. So I look kind of crazy, but I really, really like this show. What do you guys think it is? Do you think it's Ezra? Do you think it's Ren? Do you think it's the twin theory? I mean, there are really a lot of things they could do. I think they wrote it really well so they could kind of judge by the audience's reactions to things who they wanted A to be and kind of go from that. So there's definitely enough clues to point to a lot of people. So if I'm wrong, I guess I'll be okay with it because there were clues for other people. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Ezra on this one because he definitely has the most clues going his way. So yeah, if you guys have other theories on this, feel free to leave it down below. Let me know who you think A is. I would love to hear your possibilities. In 2 weeks from now, when I watch this back and I was just wrong, I'm gonna be like, oh my god, I was so wrong and so stupid. I will talk to you guys soon.